Hi, this is Mark News from Plant Talk Radio. Thanks for subscribing and listening to our podcast, Your Gardening Questions from Plant Talk Radio. If you have a gardening question you'd like our host Fred Howard to answer, send him an email. The email address is fred@planttalkradio.com. Now for today's question. We're back to the Japanese maples. So we're talking about those. Such a popular plant.
They are.
And in so many different varieties. The weepers, the ones that, as we were talking earlier, look like giant bonsai trees. And they're just beautiful. And tell us a little bit more about some of the varieties and where you like to put them.
Well, slightly protected is the starting point of the answer to that. I know that some of the older trees stand out in full sunshine from dawn to dark, wind, rains, ice, and so on. Because you see them with a 5, 6, 7, 8-inch trunk, and they're 15, 18 feet tall and just sturdy as they can be. Probably unnamed when they're that old, and simply selections. Now, Mark did check something, and as what I'll call standard trees are concerned in terms of the normal cut leaf or indented leaf is bloodgood. That is also a very good, resilient tree. I have planted those in full sun, full everything, and gotten along quite nicely. I'm not sure that I've ever bothered to compare Everred with bloodgood. They're both going to hold their color. I think Everred might be a little more red in the August-September period. Both of them have a beautiful blood red fall color. It's a complete change from the burgundy into that. And then, Mark, the list goes on, as you have pulled up there. There are tiny little plants. There are tall plants. They all carry the same name, but they are grafted onto maple rootstock. And then the cultivar that was named and or found or whatever that has the finest of leaves or the most chartreuse leaves, or one of them that Mark's looked up has a coral red bark. The leaves are kind of a chartreuse. Beautiful little thing. But when you get into something fancy like that, you're going to pay very significantly for it, which is fine. But I would put it in what I will call a protected area. Now, that doesn't mean you have to hide it in a dark corner by any means, because that may not be where you can see it well. But I would put it where it won't be in raw wind. I would probably favor, at least if it's possible, having some afternoon sun shaded. Well, yeah, that's a good way to say it. Something like 3 o'clock when it's really hot sun. If it had a shade of a bigger maple or an oak or whatever, being out 30, 40 feet from it, just the angle of the sun, will shade it some so that it doesn't burn as much. Right now, even with all the moisture we've had here in Central Ohio, the leaf scorch is still pretty significant on some varieties. And I don't make a study of it, but the ones that are more out and exposed to the winds and so on are the ones that seem to have the most scorch. Now, that is a visual destruction of the plant. Usually it doesn't have much to do with the tree's health, unless it totally scorches out, which is highly uncommon. It's just a downgrade on the beauty of the plant when they turn tan and die up part of the way on the leaf. Just not always controllable and so on. One of the things that I have found that all Japanese maples seem to thrive more with some mulch. Now, again, not deep, not necessarily touching the trunk, probably better off if it doesn't quite touch the trunk. But I've gone from using chunk bark and fine graded bark and so on, even the low spreading junipers growing over that root zone, just to take the shock out of fast soil temperature changes. Makes a big difference in Japanese maples.
Hey, thanks again for listening to our podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our other podcasts as well, the Plant of the Week podcast and the Plant Talk Radio podcast, all on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. If you'd like to sponsor a daily podcast, contact us at fred@planttalkradio.com. To find out more about Fred Howard and Plant Talk Radio, visit our website, planttalkradio.com.
Circle270media.com